acts of love. That's all it takes. Acts of love, guys. And you're going to be very, very happy in this world because love begets love, joy begets joy. You know, the kind of love that is done in your simple daily acts, at the dinner table. Pray for, give thanksgiving to your food. Um, and when that kid, whatever, throws the food on the floor and now you're wiping sticky hands, and you're forgiving that child again, not reacting to your child's temper tantrum, with extreme anger, when you bless your child every night, when you say your prayers with that child, um, you know, despite your own exhaustion, putting the shoes at the door for the millionth time, despite you asking each one of your family members to put their shoes away. Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share, and so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. Hey, welcome back to the Luella Young Show, where we get to the root of what truly makes a marriage thrive. Not the surface level solutions, not fleeting feelings, but what it means to show sacrificial love, deep trust, and really the courage to live a life of meaning, even when it hurts. And it often hurts. Sometimes I feel like I'm a real Debbie Downer when it comes to speaking about marriage. But you know what? Like, after interviewing other women that are making a difference in the world, they're not speaking about, I don't know, English gardens and romantic ideals. I mean, even one of the last ladies, Katie Faust, that I interviewed, Faust, I should pronounce her name properly. Um, it's not a fun topic to be talking about how children have really become commodities, and it's really depressing, actually. Like I said in that last episode, I mean, I have had my head in the sand, I think, when it comes to realizing what's actually happening out there. But I don't think any of us can turn a blind eye to it anymore. We have to start talking about these topics, and they're not joyful at all. And obviously, when we find true love and we're able to cohabitate as, a male and a female in a heterosexual, conjugal, loving relationship, it's it can be heaven on earth. But I think it's really hard to get to that space nowadays because of many, many different distractions in our world. But the difficulty, I feel, is mainly born out of pure selfishness, rather than selfless acts. So today I want to speak directly to the woman or man who is feeling really worn out. And I know that's a lot of you out there. You've probably done the therapy. I almost sure positive that you read the books. And you really tried to be the better communicator, you know, and still the loneliness, lingers. The disconnection feels heavier than ever. And you end up asking yourself, is this really what marriage is supposed to be? Well, you're not alone. Okay. If that, I know sometimes it doesn't make anybody feel any better. It's like, okay, great. I'm not the only one feeling like this. But that doesn't take my hurt away. But, I'm here to tell you that what you're trying to build is worth it. Okay. It might look different than what you expected it to be, what they told you it was going to be, what you dreamed of it as a little girl to be, but it's still worth it. And you're still doing the right thing by hanging in there. As I've said many, many times before, marriage is not a contract, okay? It's more of a calling to do good things on the earth. It's not even it isn't a lifestyle choice either. Like it's not just a phase of your life. It's like, oh yeah, that time when I was married and you know, no, it's actually a sacred vocation and you need to start seeing it that way. It's a calling. You were called to be someone else's partner and it's hard at times. But honestly, if you're happy, I was going to say, 50% of the time, but no, I'm going to say 51% of the time. And I can say I'm happy 51% of the time, you know, and that's what makes me stay in my marriage. Like it's like like that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not always going to be 90% happy. And the days where it's 30% happy, just know that that's normal. Okay. And marriage it is a sacred calling. It's a very, very important job. But you have to realize sometimes that I think this is the way I look at it. This is the way I honestly look at it as a therapist, of 25 years of doing this work, is I honestly feel we all have our burdens in life, our crosses to bear. And you might have one of those marriages that are like the top 20%, maybe the top 10%. It's sort of like, I don't know why God has bestowed me with, this amazing wife or husband, but my marriage could not be better. It checks off all the boxes for me. But then I still feel like you're going to have your cross to bear. Maybe it's the loss of someone's incredibly dear to you. Maybe it's a past trauma that you're still trying to get a hold of, to tame the demon, maybe it's a physical disability. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't know. And you might think that's weird. Like, okay, Luella, why can't, someone just like go through life? Because I think through the suffering, we create the joy in our life. You cannot have love without suffering. It's impossible. So I do feel it's more of a gift that you're given the suffering. And it's not as much of a cross that you think it is. So, the the original, like put it going back to marriage and what was our whole purpose in getting married? I think a lot of people have missed the plot on this one. Yes, it's fulfilling in the sense that, the selflessness of you giving value to another person brings you joy. It does, especially when it's reciprocal. That's what we want. But we also have to think that one of the main reasons is to produce life. and the original tree of life from which society bears its fruit. You have to see it like that. As Father Ian Newsy says so well, marriage is the tree, you know, um, because we can all have different vocations in life, right? Including, let's say, the priestly life or, those who have given themselves to God. But even religious vocations are the fruit, because without the tree, without strong families, there wouldn't be any priests, sisters, leaders of the country. There is no society, guys. And this is also my argument, basically, for same-sex marriage. I mean, I feel that if two same-sex individuals want to spend the rest of their lives together, then wonderful. You know, take pleasure in one another's company. That it, I don't think you should be excluded in any shape, way, or form from society. Long are the days where there were lepers in the world, but y- you cannot contribute to society. You cannot bear the fruit, the children. You can't. You biologically cannot. And now this is where the world has gone to hell in a handbasket, right? Because I want what I want, meaning you're right, Luella. I have to agree with you. That's a fact. Biologically, two people of the same sex cannot get married. I mean, cannot bear children. It's impossible. Therefore, because I want what I want, I am going to go to surrogacy, and this is where children become commodities because I will pay for this service now. It's something that's never meant to be, but that's what Katie's doing. She's putting children first in the world, um, and trying to end this craziness. So we have to see ourselves as co-creators with God, plain and simply. This is what he wanted us to do, to bear the fruit and be prosperous and, allow humanity to continue, basically. And if we abandon that vision, this is when the entire world ceases to exist. This is where the entire orchard withers. And so, I mean, like when your marriage feels hard, when your spouse doesn't get it, he doesn't get you, when the spark is gone and you're left with all you're left is routine or silence, I want you to consider this. You know, maybe what you're experiencing isn't failure as you've been told. Maybe it's your call to sanctification. And you're kind of going, okay, whoa, like, I don't think in my world that I'm going to become a saint. But every time you give selflessly, you're getting closer to God and you are becoming sanctified, whether you like it or not. Because true love, the love that God asks of us, is not self-fulfillment. It's not filling my needs. It's self-offering. And that's why Thomas Aquinas didn't define love as a feeling, but instead as willing the good of the other. So it often costs us something to do that. And in today's culture of instant gratification, that message sounds not only preposterous, but offensive. Like people would take offense to that. What do you mean by that? Anyway, I mean, I mentioned briefly this whole idea of inclusivity and what is, you could define as self-made love. Um, we we feel right now, on a federal, provincial, state level that we have to make sure that everyone is included, that we're not isolating any gender preference, individual in any way. Oh my gosh, like I feel like, yeah, we're living in this world where people cry out for inclusion, and yet you must see this as well. We have never felt more excluded. You know, we're just so focused on labeling and segmenting and all the self-identifying into oblivion, and what has that gotten us? Like we're now replacing some sort of shared meaning that we all have as humans with slogans and flags and marches, you know, and then we're wondering, why do we feel so disconnected and defensive? It seems like we have no problem, on July 1st or the 4th of July to raise our flags stating, um, or professing our nationalism. But why do we have to, which is lovely, but why do we have to segment it even more than that? We don't have uh, women, like, I mean, female marches and parades and a flag that were female. All the females are not raising a flag and stating that we're female, and the men doing the same. It's like, okay, it's obvious. I mean, you know, but all of a sudden now we have to sort of like segment it even more into all these little different categories. I mean, how is that inclusive? That makes no sense to me. Um, that message does not lead to unity, guys. It's complete fragmentation, and that's exactly what we're seeing in society now. It really encourages us to assert our identity rather than receive it from God. God already gave us our identity. Yes, we are all very individualistic. There's no Luella out there, nor is there any Nancy, Sarah, Jacob, or John. I mean, not every John is alike. We are all very different. But just to say it plainly, like, you were not made to invent yourself. It's already been done. And you take what you get, whether that's, you're a size 12 or a size 2, whether you have blonde eyes, blue eyes, blonde hair, brown eyes, black hair, black skin, white skin, whatever you were given, take it and be happy with it. You know, just do good in the world. Like, bring value to the world. It's not about that. Yeah, take your body and find joy in it, and worry about other things. Because, like, honestly, your dignity doesn't come from your identity label or some sort of political alignment that you're with. It's, even like in the nutrition world, right? Like, I'm a vegan, I'm a carnivore, like, how can you say these things about, you're all wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's ridiculous. What a waste of time when you think about it. What a, like, complete waste of time. And people, you're wasting your money on all that stuff too. Just eat freaking healthy food and very simple food, and carry on with other bigger things that you need to be doing in life. Um, I don't know. It's like, it's complicated on many, but it doesn't need to be complicated. You know, um, if you want to speak about inclusivity, we all share, one God. And he gave up his only son for us. And that's how we all share, you know, in our own salvation. And we get to live life, in that lens, um, rejoicing in that salvation. That's true inclusivity, if you want to bring it up to that level. It's one flag. Like it's not even different nations. No, we're all human. Um, he loves us all. One flag, one family. There's no need to be performative here. Um, or I'm better than you, any sort of virtue signaling, but it's just plain, real, embodied love, acts of love. That's all it takes. Acts of love, guys. And you're going to be very, very happy in this world because love begets love, joy begets joy. You know, the kind of love that is done in your simple daily acts, at the dinner table. Pray for, give thanksgiving to your food. Um, and when that kid, whatever, throws the food on the floor and now you're wiping sticky hands, and you're forgiving that child again, not reacting to your child's temper tantrum, with extreme anger, when you bless your child every night, when you say your prayers with that child, um, you know, despite your own exhaustion, putting the shoes at the door for the millionth time, despite you asking each one of your family members to put their shoes away, um, replacing the toilet paper roll lovingly after the last person left that one square on it. We've all been there, guys. Yes, you praying quietly when the words that you chose to use fail, and speaking with your husband, for example, the difficult conversation that you were avoiding, you made sure you had it and it still failed. It's like like I said, when hell in a handbasket happens, you know, or your best intentions sink like a hot air balloon. That's what I'm talking about. You just stand up and you do it all over again the next day. Um, and of course, guys, I'm not talking about like extreme situations where there's physical and emotional abuse. I hope you understand that. Everybody has their own story. And I'm not telling you to stay in a severely abusive relationship, but that's not why most marriages are ending. Like I wish it what, I wish, you know, because those marriages should end, right? No one needs to be physically or continually emotionally abusing. Um, but that's not what's happening in most marriages. I'm talking about the marriages where someone is just sort of like fed up, dissatisfied, comparing their relationship to other relationships. And honestly, again, people that just think that they deserve constant happiness. And their girlfriends are telling them that as well. You deserve to be happy. Um, and yeah, so these are the times where we need to realize that peace is not that far away from us. You know, it's peace is not something that you create by divorcing your husband. It's something that you receive. And like I said, after I've spent over 25 years as a therapist, and I feel like I've helped a lot of people, but because of, well, I guess what I'm seeing, like I find myself, and I mentioned this before, turning less towards psychology to help people and turning more to theology. I mean, if you're listening to this episode, I think you probably figured that out already. And it's why? You might ask me, well, it's pretty simple. It's because most of the pain I see isn't just mental or emotional, it's spiritual. It's being disconnected. It's the ache of disconnectedness from all source of peace, which is God. And he lives within you. So you've somehow disconnected yourself from him. And sometimes I feel like I'm becoming my mother because it's sort of like it used to be on rare occasion where I'd hear something and I'd be like, what is going on with the world? But now it's like almost every single day, you know, so I'm not just hearing my mom going like, what is going on? The world's going crazy. I'm sure if you have mothers, you've heard it all from them as well. Like, you know, but like I'm opening up women's magazines to articles with titles such as, I think the last one that I saw in the Chatelaine was I'm having the best sex of my life in my 50s. And the subtitle is something like my husband and I have never, no, my husband and I have always had great sex, but non-monogamy, sorry, I was monogamy made our sex life even better. I'm just like, what? What? Like, what is going on? So, first of all, you're saying that you do have good sex, and obviously that's very, very meaningful for you. Um, but that wasn't good enough. You jumped the fence. Well, I guess you didn't jump the fence because you just maybe you're into inclusivity and you just feel like you got to make yourself available to other people as well. I don't know. And then the CBC had something the other day too, talking about how people that are getting divorced are setting up gift registries because divorce is expensive and people need to start over. So why wouldn't they have a gift registry? Are you kidding me? Hey, this is what I mean. Like, what is going on? What is going on? I'm quite concerned. Um, but, you know, in the midst of this, that's when I turn to like the Gospel of Mark when the disciples are panicking in the storm and Jesus is asleep in the boat. You know, Bishop Barron actually, um, in speaking towards this piece in the Bible, he talked about how there's three ways to read that story, and I really like this. I'll share it with you because I find it incredibly healing myself. That again, Christ is the peace. Like I'm telling you before, Christ is peace himself. It's not some idea or, a step that you have to do or some sort of technique or a tip that I'm going to give you, to use only on these instances. No, he is the calm in the storm. He always is. He sleeps in the boat because he's not afraid. And this is what you have to tell yourself too in those moments of despair. And because he is God and he does dwell within us, then the peace is something that you don't have to chase. It's in you already. It's something to just welcome back and remind yourself it's there, you know? The second way he described it is that sometimes we let Christ fall asleep within us. We all know what that means. It's like neglecting prayer. I don't have time for this today. We stop going to mass because, when the kids' practices being that day or you're off to the lake. Hey, there's other times to go. There's a lot of weekday masses that you can go to instead. That's as if you're a practicing Catholic, it's it's one of your obligations to attend mass at least weekly, at least. But we tend to want to rely on self-help more, like I say, the books, perhaps the therapist, or your coach or whoever that might be, but we ignore the true helper, and then we wonder, why are we feeling burnt out? Well, hey, maybe you haven't turned to the source of peace. Maybe that's the reason. And the third way he described this story was Christ descends into the storm with us. We're never doing this all alone. He doesn't just fix us from a distance, he enters our chaos, our conflict, our confusion. He knows the weight of our pain because he bore it himself. So, this is not psychology, guys. As I said before, this is salvation. Yeah. So let me bring it back to marriage. If here I am talking so cheerfully again, but this is reality. This is marriage. If you're in a marriage right now that feels dry, painful, stuck, I want you to listen to me. The very suffering that you're doing right now may be your path to holiness, you know? Maybe you were called to do this, to suffer as God suffered for us. And it's not going to God is not going to make you suffer forever. You know, that's not what he would never abandon you. And we have to think about our life on this earth being so short compared to eternity, everlasting eternity in heaven. You know, I sometimes joke with my clients, like, I think we should see this like as, you know, 5 million years from now, we're going to be sort of sitting back in what seems like paradise and kind of going, you remember that time on earth where yeah, yeah, that marriage was trying. Hmm. Oh yeah, and I had that constant back pain. Yeah, kind of remember that. I kind of faintly remember that. Hmm. Oh well, you know, we have to see it like that, guys. Like this suffering is finite. It's not going to be infinite. Our instead, our life, I don't know, something's happening with my mic. I think it's okay. Our life with God is eternal, and that's what we have to keep for in the forefront of our minds. So yeah, so we have to see it as spending, you know, we're spending so much time trying not to offend people or hurt anyone's feelings, and not to appear judgmental. But in the process, like we really forget to the call to love, I should say. You know, and that way, that's why I said it's simple. Like, stop worrying about what other people feel. Just do the loving act. Um, Pick up the phone and apologize. You know, don't go through the whole scripts. You know what exactly? Like it's really simple. I'm sorry. I've been thinking about what went on, and I'm sorry. You know, um, you're telling the truth. You're sorry. You know, and honesty is always the best policy. You can't do any harm by being like that. Uh, and that's called showing up when it's inconvenient. You know, and that type of love, like those acts of love, like those are the daily acts of love that, you know, that aren't being unnoticed. You know, getting up in the middle of the night with a sick kid, or having just another awkward dinner conversation, even with your partner, or maybe it's a silent one, you know, um, because they're not opening up anytime soon. And they may not have the capacity to do so, but it doesn't mean that your marriage is done. Okay? It's not Instagram, guys. Um, but it's sacred. Okay? And I often say that modern marriages, like the problems now, come down to spiritual confusion. We want the fruit of love, we want the connection, we want the joy, we want the companionship, but we reject the root, which is sacrifice. We want it all without any price to pay. And, you know, we'll say, I'm just not happy anymore, and think that that justifies walking away. Well, it doesn't. Because you know what? You were never promised happiness. in the way culture defines it. But how about thinking about it instead as holiness is at your hand. It's within reach. That holiness comes from you making the sacrifices, doing the pruning, through the discomfort, and having that patience that is so hard. I love the Saint Augustine, his I feel like I say it in my head all the time. It's our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And that's, I think, what modern day anxiety is that when our hearts aren't resting in God, that's when we feel anxious. When we ignore everything that I just told you about, um, and we think we can do it another way. But hey, guys, you weren't put here to fix your spouse. And doesn't that feel great? That's not your burden. Not perfecting your marriage, not trying to do it all, but instead resting in him, returning to him, trusting that your marriage, however messy it is still the tree that bears fruit. So I want you to stop chasing peace through control, independence, autonomy, or success or performance, whatever you're running after, and instead just return to the quiet dignity of being a wife and a husband, of loving without needing to be right, showing up without needing applause, of trusting that when we anchor ourselves in God's will, peace will come slowly. It might not happen for years, but fight the good fight, guys. Be steady. Like the calm after the storm. The storm will pass. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it gave you some encouragement. Hopefully it made you think of your marriage in a different way. And maybe send it to somebody else who's struggling. Okay. All right. We'll see you here next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.